All right, so this is pretty nuts. Getting this over from the UAP Reporting Center is that Lockheed and NASA engineer Richard Banduric had made some pretty crazy claims. Okay, so saying that trillions of UFO particles are scattered across Earth, materials that cloak, reassemble, and self-destruct, interfere with electronics, and communicate and too advanced to be human-made. Okay, so this is someone speaking who worked at both Lockheed Martin and NASA with these particular claims, and there's an actual full clip that I'm going to play. So check this out, and we'll talk about what we think about it afterwards.
They were smart materials. Like one of the things is when these materials, you'd be looking at them and you try to reverse engineer them, that they would turn to dust. And they would do it within a minute or two. And then so you could take the dust and then set it off and get the isotopic analysis done on them. And they were extraterrestrial. But these materials, I mean, we're looking at something that's hundreds of years ahead of us. When you look under a microscope or an electron microscope, you're looking at something that's composed of very small particles that seem to be communicating with one another. So those are the things that I've been involved in that we can talk about. But, I think that's one of the reasons why extraterrestrial materials are not really available to most people, is because most of them are set to disintegrate if they get in the wrong hand. Isotopic analysis of the dust that's left behind tells you it's extraterrestrial, at least where it was manufactured. But so we're looking at materials that can reconfigure themselves. So they are composed of small subunits. So the type of things I looked at were something as small as a sliver of metal that would reconfigure itself depending on where it was. It would cloak itself and it would try to blend into the environment. So the ones that this one NGO used to get a hold of were the ones that were technically broken. I guess the ones that didn't really function very well. So then you could collect them every once in a while and then try to analyze them. You could do things like split them apart, and they would attempt to find each other or reconfigure. Some of the experiments they did was we took one of those and we put it on a very hot surface of about 3,000 degrees. And what it would do is it cooled the surface around itself. And then when we took the device off and then weighted again, we would find that the mass would be reduced by a certain amount.
Do these feel like programmed materials to you, Richard?
Yeah, they were, like I was saying, they're more intelligent materials. Like these subunits probably had computational functionality, right? Because they knew what their neighbors were all about, and they knew they could reprogram themselves to be something different, right? If they needed to change themselves. So these are really curious types of materials. So that's how we could kind of tell they were extraterrestrial, because these things weren't like decades ahead of us. They were probably hundreds of years ahead of us.
I mean, again, those are pretty wild claims in general. But this is coming from a guy who worked at these companies. Everyone says, hey, they have stuff. And then you go, well, how come no one's ever talking about that works there? And nothing? And we just did a video about the alien ring camera thing. And I said one of the things that was intriguing about that is the fact that they actually covered it on NBC News. Where's this? Where's this? How is this? I mean, this is the type of stuff that I don't get, that it's not covered, where you're like, okay, here's a guy who's making these types of claims. And can we have a guy like this testify at the hearing? Is that possible? What about that? I want to see how that works. I want to see if they're like, okay, look, you worked at these companies, you're saying these particular things. It's always on a podcast or it's always on an interview. It's like, how about saying this in front of Congress? How about saying this is what these things did? And I worked here, and I know for a fact that Lockheed Martin has it. I know for a fact that these materials were found here. I know for a fact this is the type of stuff you want to see. You want to hear from. You want to hear different people like this besides the normal, or not normal, but the familiar whistleblowers and things that we're hearing about. You want to get people like this because the materials in general is saying what it did. The fact that you've heard similar things like this before, that the materials are so outworldly and obviously, and he said definitively, by the way, it was extraterrestrial. Definitively. But you've heard things, even with, I remember the James Fox documentary I think Moment of Contact, where they said they touched certain things, and it just kind of, the feel of it was like nothing of this world, and how it's, they were able to, but he says you're able to study it and be able to put it under certain scientific studies, but the material just kind of evaporated almost, or dissolved rather. And there's a lot there in general. This is, to me, this is a bigger story than I think a lot of people are talking about, because of the implications it could have that someone had the information, worked at these places. Now, the flip side now goes to this. The report that came out, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, however many months ago that was, about the misinformation and the things that were out there. Is this one of those potential stories, if you believe that, to where they're like, this is them still doing the same thing? Now it's somebody who's working at Lockheed Martin. They want to get the attention away from the stuff that they're actually working on, military stuff and other things, and they want you to focus in on this otherworldly, extraterrestrial stuff, because people are saying that we have it. Have one of our guys go out and say we have it. We don't have shit. Let them believe it, and then they'll stay away from this and start investigating and stop investigating this over here. I think that's far-fetched. But it's an interesting theory. Or is it just people know that the information, it's there's only so much longer that people can keep it quiet? What say you? Put your thoughts in there. What do you make of these claims? Significant? Not significant? Put your thoughts in there. Let me know. All right, thanks for joining me on the channel. Subscribe as always. I appreciate you. See you soon.